Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. And today I wanted to talk about the Banking Advisor Intern 27-week training at RBC. I had a comment on one of my videos asking what the pipeline is going to be like, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. The main thing about this 27-week training is that if you don't have the IFC designation coming in, you will be given 3 months to obtain this designation. I can't remember if it was 3 months or 2 months. It's been some time, but they list it and they tell you specifically before you even get into the program. They give you a timeline for you to obtain your designation. If you do not obtain your designation within that time limit, it does not mean that they're just going to kick you out. It just means that you have to report to your manager. Your whole 27-week is going to be delayed. There's going to be performance issues because at the end of the year, they are going to be looking at how good or how bad you did during the year. If you're significantly lagging behind the other interns, your end of the year performance will be rated poorly. Now, that does not mean that there is no saving that. It just means that you got off a bad start, maybe due to life, due to family, something happened, right? So you don't have to worry about that too much. You just have to keep it in the back of your mind that there is a timeline for you to obtain your designation. And the core part of your training, you just follow it. There's a lot of online courses that you do. You just go in, you sit there, you listen, you take notes. If there's something you don't understand, you talk to your mentor or you ask the online courses facilitator. A lot of the mentors and the people at the branch are nice. If you go ask them questions, they will tell you if they have the time to answer you or not. And most of the times they'll be willing to share their knowledge with you, and it's not as bad as saying like, oh, I want to ask a question and no one's going to answer you. There are some branches like that, but they are on the rare side. It really depends on where you're placed. And talking about placing, this is a very important factor. So placing comes at the very end, and I'll talk about that later. Right now we're talking about the training, and it's really weird in the financial industry right now. A lot of the banks are kind of dropping off this role. Only RBC and CIBC, maybe Scotiabank, I'm not really sure, have this role. So like take TD for example. If you go in, you're just a teller, right? That's the most basic role you can do at a bank in the front office. You're just a teller. And the next step should be a banking advisor, right? Something like that. But TD doesn't have that. TD goes directly from teller all the way to financial advisor. So there's a gap in between that the financial advisors basically take on the role of banking advisor all the way down to what a teller does. And for a financial advisor, there's basically no more training for you. You get less training, but you take on more stuff, right? So what TD does is they're really smart. They don't train as many financial advisors as they do. They just take banking advisors and universal bankers from other institutions that are already trained, have a little bit of experience, maybe 1 year and above, and they just take them and onboard them onto the financial advisor program. Because when you think about it, right, why train yourself when you can just take someone else's trainee? Now, this is something that isn't talked about a lot in the financial world, but it's just something I wanted to put out there. So during the training, you'll be stationed to do a lot of things. You'll be taught how to be a teller, because banking advisor encompasses the role of being a teller. You have to know how to do normal money stuff and front service kind of stuff. So sometimes when you go into a bank and you do a normal transaction, the person sitting there might be a banking advisor, they might not even be a teller. The reason for this is because they want someone who has been licensed or is licensed to be able to do transactions on the spot, right? If they see an opportunity, they'll be able to take them into their office and talk about investments and things like that. Makes it faster, so there's not another layer there, right? Normally the first point of contact would be the tellers, and then the tellers would do the discovery, and then you go into the back and then they talk to you. But for banking advisor, they do everything. So you're kind of a universal banker, right? You take care of the front, you take care of the mutual funds, sometimes mortgages, you do mortgage renewals sometimes, right? So you're more of a universal kind of person. The training lasts, even though it lasts for 27 weeks, it'll fly by really fast. The comment I had was saying that they were afraid of falling behind or going too fast. In my opinion, going too fast or going too slow is always not good. I went a little bit too fast on my training. I blazed past it. I finished all my online courses. The only opinion I have to give is that if you do see the online courses, finish it fast. Just get rid of all of them, right? So the physical training that you go through, where it's like money training or opening accounts, things like that, you take it real slow, okay? There's no benefit in you going fast on that, because what's going to happen is once the training period is up, you're going to be assigned or something, and then your sales targets are going to come in, right? During your training period, even though they say you do not have a sales target, you still kind of do, but not that much, right? Because you're still in your training period. You probably don't even have your credentials, right? You don't even have your IFIC. You don't even have your name card. There's nothing you have. Like, what are you going to do, right? So it's kind of unfair to judge a trainee, an intern like that if you're not done. It's like, how are you going to evaluate their weekly sales targets or their monthly sales? There's nothing, right? So finishing fast is sort of good in a way, in a sense that if you want to get to the end goal and start making sales targets, then you probably want to do that. If you're just there for the money, for the paycheck, bi-weekly paycheck, maybe rushing towards the end is not a good idea, because you're still earning the same amount of money every single 2 weeks. You're not earning more, you're not earning less just because you're a higher performer versus a lower performer. Sure, you might get, your manager might come in and ask you, how are you doing and things like that. But during the training period, obviously, there's going to be things you don't know and you can't do, right? So there's no way for a manager to come in and ask you to sell more because you're just not qualified, or maybe you can't, right? So that's a little perk. And after you finish your training, the bank will place you at a certain branch, depending on if a manager wants you there or not. This comes in a dilemma, because during my time at training, I was moved around a lot. So I had a lot of managers, right? It might happen in your area. It might not. I'm just there to warn you. You might not be you might not be stationed at exactly the same branch, and that causes a whole lot of issues, right? You're essentially just a mobile banker. They tell you to go to branch A, you go to branch A. Tomorrow they might be like, hey, can you do branch B? Or you're like, sure, because everyone else is probably stationed at their branch already. There's no way they're going to tell this person to go all the way to that branch, or you're going to tell you because you're the trainee, right? So you got to bite the dust and you got to go over there. And what RBC does is they don't reimburse you for your travel fees. It could be all the way in nowhere, like within a certain range, right? Within a certain range, it's still acceptable. So they think like, okay, if it's all the way down there, it might take you 10 minutes to drive. It might take you 2 hours to bus there. You're going there to support for that day, right? So that's a downside of trying to finish your training fast. It might even happen during your training. Like once you're done with your teller training, they're just going to tell you to go to this branch, to this branch, to this branch. So you're going to be mobile as hell, even though they don't tell you that you might be mobile in the job description, they expect you to have a certain amount of mobility within the region, right? So that's like a downside of what comes next. The faster you finish a training, that's just the faster you're going to be doing things like that. And you might not even be placed within a year or after your training is done, because that's just your training. You have to wait and see until a manager has to approve that you are good to be by yourself. You can do everything by yourself, right? And then you will be licensed fully. Because during the time, even if you sign all the papers and everything, you're still technically a trainee. You're licensed, but you're not allowed to do certain things. You have to get a secondary opinion. You have to get your manager. You have to get someone, right? Someone that has higher, more experience than you in dealing with this kind of stuff. You can't just sign away a bunch of loans and things like that. It kind of makes sense. So the problem with that is if you're moving in between branches, like I said, it might be permanent. So they just tell you to move to another branch for support for a couple of months. During that time, if anything happens, like you're in between the moment you're signing and your manager was supposed to look at you, they're just going to transfer you to another manager, and they're going to transfer you to another manager and another manager. So what's going to happen is it's going to become really messy, right? And that's how all the banks are going to start doing their things now for training. They're just going to throw you around until someone picks you up, and that someone is a manager, and that branch manager could take forever to show up. You could essentially just be the mobile banker in your area, just throwing around like no one cares, right? So after talking about all of that, I think it's time for me to stop the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.